As you can imagine, the president's trip to Cuba is not making, in fact, a lot of people happy in the exile community here in South Florida. Local 10's Hatzel Vela continues our live team coverage from Southwest Miami-Dade. Hatzel.
Calvin, you speak to members of the Cuban exile community, and they'll tell you that they're not too happy that he is going. They say that it's too soon, but now that he's going, they feel that he should take with him a pro-democracy message, and they say he must meet with dissidents. Too many concessions by the president, nothing in return. That's the consensus by those who believe human rights have taken a backseat in the president's approach to Cuba.
Nothing has changed with regards to democracy and human rights in Cuba.
Orlando Gutierrez heads the Cuban Democratic Directorate, an organization who tracks dissidents on the island.
We denounce this visit.
He says repression and violence against the opposition has increased. Just in January of this year, according to the Cuban Commission on Human Rights, there were more than 1,400 arbitrary detentions. Last year, more than 8,600.
They like what they have absolute power. Unless they're pressured, unless there's a real international consensus led by the U.S. for democracy in Cuba, they will hold on as long as they can.
No one should be naive to think that somehow the Cuban government is going to respect human rights just because there's been a policy change from the United States.
It's going to take time, says Frank Mora, the director of FIU's Cuban Research Institute, once Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Western Hemisphere in the Obama administration.
He's going to be sending messages to the Cuban government that it is time to think about how to create a more inclusive, pluralistic, democratic society.
One thing both men agree on, the president must meet with dissidents.
Ignoring these people would be tantamount to anyone in the world ignoring Martin Luther King Jr. when it came to civil rights in the U.S.
And at 5:30, you're going to hear from more folks in the community. You're also going to hear from Gorky, a man who is a Cuban musician who's highly critical of the Castro government, who happens to be here in Miami, what he says about what should happen when President Obama visits Cuba. That and much more at 5:30. But for now, reporting live in Southwest Miami-Dade, Hatzel Vela, Local 10 News.